And welcome. This is Thursday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. We are coming to you from the Giants podcast studio. It is presented by Hackensack University Medical Center, or Hackensack Meridian Health, I should say. They have the Hackensack University Medical Center as part of their entire complex, and great corporation. Keep getting better. And I finally got that promo out of the way at the top. I usually bury it a couple minutes in, or sometimes in the middle, sometimes at the back end by my mistake, but we got it right up at the top. Again, Hackensack Meridian Health, keep getting better. All right, 201-939-4513 is our phone number on the program today. We'll be here for the next hour to talk Giants football with you. It was a media session and open practice OTA. And so there's a lot of stuff that we can discuss, whether it be the comments made by Brandon Brown, the assistant general manager, or some of the players, or, of course, talking about some of the plays that we saw at practice. So there's quite a bit of stuff that we can discuss during the next hour. He's Matt Citak. I'm Paul Dottino. So glad you could join us today. 201-939-4513 is our phone number. If you're not joining us live, and again, we're coming to you at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time today because of the practice session. We wanted to make sure that we discuss things with you after all of the media availabilities so that we'd have some content to talk about. So we'll be back to 12:30 p.m. tomorrow, but today and next Thursday will be 1:30 starts because they are open media avails, and that does affect what it is we're going to be able to talk about with you. If you're listening to this show on the archive, don't forget our entire podcast network is available on the Giants mobile app, podcast platforms everywhere, and at giants.com/podcasts. Now, one of the things you probably are going to read about a lot today in the papers tomorrow, or certainly on the internet as we move on with the afternoon and the evening, is that there was a bit of a spirited couple of plays at the end of this afternoon's practice that ended right around lunchtime. And Brian Burns, the Giants' edge rusher, was involved there at the end. He was the one common denominator. Actually, I believe James Hudson was another common denominator involved in the spirited situation at the end of practice. And Burns did address the media. And, you know, as far as I'm concerned, basically just told everybody exactly how he felt.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's OTA number 6. The guys have been going at it at practice every day. These are all very competitive people, obviously. They're all NFL players. And as you and I both know, it is extremely hot outside today. It was like 90 degrees out.
Heat index was over 90.
Yeah, in the glaring sun. The heat just, got to them a little bit. It was just the heat of the moment type of thing. But Brian Burns completely brushed it off after saying, we've literally moved on already. This was squashed immediately. It's not deep. There's nothing to it. I mean, he mentioned that, hey, we get in fights and arguments about ping pong games, about food in the cafeteria, pool. So, there might be some people out there that might try to blow this up out of proportion, but it was very clear from what Brian Burns said that this was not anything that anyone on this team is that concerned about. It was just one of those heat of the moment type of things between competitors.
All right, so that's where we stand as of today. There will be another practice tomorrow, correct?
No,
tomorrow's Friday. They're off
until
tomorrow.
Monday.
They are off tomorrow. That's right.
4 practices next week.
Which, by the way, again, with the way the heat index was over 90 today, the humidity, the haze, it was nasty. I'm glad to say I did not see anybody leave early or have to get an IV. Thank goodness.
No, I almost did. Just standing on the sideline. I bathed myself in sunscreen, and I still feel like I got burnt.
All right. We might as well go through some of the better plays of the day that we saw at practice. There were 7-on-7s. There were team 11-on-11s. Remember, no contact in these practice sessions. That's kind of why, even though Abdul Carter and Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau all had really good days rushing the passer, I don't even mention those, to be frank. I will mention it here because, yes, all 3 of those guys were in the backfield a lot today, and Brian Daboll was real happy with their effort and their energy, penetrating the line of scrimmage. But, folks, if there's no contact, what is an offensive lineman or a tight end supposed to do when the guy comes in on a pass rush? Okay? So to me, by default, if those guys are coming in on a rush, the only thing you can tell from that play is if the running back or the tight end or the quarterback were able to identify the rusher, where he was coming from, and then run the route, the hot route. Or for that matter, even if there's not a hot route involved, does the quarterback see it, move out of the pocket, get rid of the ball? That's what you gain from those plays. I have a very hard time. I know John loves to talk about the guys, oh, that would have been a sack. How do you know it would have been a sack? If the offensive lineman could touch them, how do you know it would have been a sack?
Yeah, John likes standing during OTAs at the line of scrimmage to see the line of scrimmage play, and I agree with you. These guys aren't really touching each other. There's not too much you can pick up. I mean, yes, Brian Burns had a couple of quote-unquote would-be sacks. Again, this is with little to no effort from the offensive line to really stop him.
Basically, those guys are handcuffed.
Yeah. The one thing I will say is Abdul Carter did get in the backfield for another one of those would-be sacks. And on that one rush, he did have a very nice spin move that even if the offensive linemen were trying to stop him, I don't think they would have been able to stop him. But again, I can't say that for sure because there's no contact. So as we said before the start of OTAs and just about every single day, there's not too much you can gain from the offensive and defensive lines during OTAs because they can't really. I mean, when you watch an NFL play, the offensive lineman and defensive lineman are going at each other. Full contact. It's the most, the most contact, and I don't want to say violent, but it is. And without any of that during OTAs, we can talk about these would-be sacks, but until training camp starts and the guys have the pads on and contact is loud and the linemen can really start kind of going at each other, it's not worth talking too much about the guys up front.
Like what even Brian Dable says, this is a passing camp.
Yes.
And what they're looking for is guys, it's alignment and assignment. If you can do those things correctly, that's what you're trying to find out. Even, I believe, wasn't it, I think it was Kafka today? Or was it Bowen? One of the coordinators said today, we're trying to flood these guys with as much as we can to see what they can retain. That's what this is about. This is about mental reps and stuff of that nature. All right, having said that, all right, let me highlight a few of the defensive plays. You probably have a few offensive plays you want to mention. Okay, let's do that. 3 interceptions between the 11-on-11s that were run today. There was one by Hawkins, one by Belton, and one by Page. I thought the one by Hawkins was the most athletic.
Oh, that was an incredible catch.
It really was.
He made an amazing play on the ball. It was like a sideline pass. I want to say maybe 30-ish yards down the field, and he just went up there and grabbed it in front of the receiver. It was a great play.
And again, remember, folks, when these DBs are making these plays, because there's no contact, he's got to make sure that he's making that play as cleanly as he possibly can, because you're not allowed to touch the receiver. It's even more what's the word I'm looking for? It's more criminal than pass interference in a game, because at least in a game you can do something to him. Out here you can't. So that's what made that play on the sideline incredibly impressive. He twisted, he turned, he reached for it, read the ball perfectly, and that's a big play for Hawkins, because we just talked about him the other day as a guy who's got to inject himself into the competition on the depth chart.
Yeah, and I mean, look, that was his first big splash play.
It really was.
But he has gotten his hands on the ball at times during the spring. It's not like he's been, non-existent. This was definitely his biggest play. And I just want to quickly touch on Dane Belton, because I'm a big Dane Belton fan.
And Coach said he's had a good camp.
He's had a very good camp. I mean, this was the OTA 6, but the first day we're not going to really count because there were no team drills. So 5th practice, and today was his 3rd interception.
Yep.
I mean, I've spoken time and time again about how he's just been a ball hawk in his limited playing time. And with the addition of Javon Holland, he's likely looking at the role of, the 3rd safety on the team between Holland and Newbin and then himself. Well, he's certainly making a case to get as much playing time as possible this spring because, again, his 3rd interception, the ball seems to always find him, or he always seems to find the ball no matter where he is on the field. So just great to see him continuing his hot spring through the second week.
All right, I'll give you a few more defensive plays, then I want you to take the offense, okay?
Yep.
In 7-on-7s, Flott had a really nice pass to Flint over the middle. Later on, let's see what I also wrote down. On 11-on-11s, it was Chatham. We weren't sure if it was Golston originally or Chatham. Both guys appeared to have a chance at knocking the ball down at the line of scrimmage. It was Chapman.
Yes, we had to go to the video replay
Yes.
from our production team.
We even
confirmed
have
it.
that.
We
even
confirmed
have video replay review here at practice, and it was Chapman who did have the pass defense, which was really terrific as he pushed the front of the pocket. We also had, let's see, what else did I write down? In 11-on-11s, Flott also had a pass defense down the left sideline. So that was 2 plays for Cordell Flott today, one in 7-on-7s and one in 11-on-11s. And I think those were basically the best defensive plays that I saw today. Why don't you go to offense?
Yeah, so for me, the player of the day on the offensive side of the ball was Darius Slayton.
Yeah.
He was making catches from all the quarterbacks. I mean, he started things off catching I want to call it about a 40-yard, but deep touchdown pass from Jameis Winston where he just got behind the defense.
7-on-7s.
Yes, during 7-on-7s, Jameis placed the ball perfectly right in the breadbasket. I mean, he had a couple of steps on the defender, but great throw, great catch by Darius. And then moving over to 11-on-11s, Russell Wilson connected with Darius a couple of times. There was a nice cross route, but the real play of the day for me was his sideline catch. Deep down the field, he made a one-handed grab.
Sweet.
Such an athletic play. One-handed, just stuck his hand out, ball stuck right to his glove. Great catch. That was definitely the play of the day, but Russell Wilson and Darius Slayton, granted, there's Malik Neighbors has not been out here and clearly is the number one option in the pass game, but it is obvious that Russell Wilson and Darius Slayton are developing some nice chemistry during these spring practices, and he's not the only one because Jalen Hyatt also had a couple of grabs from Russell Wilson. And then in his press conference after practice, Russell Wilson went out of his way to say how impressed he's been with Jalen Hyatt and how much he likes him and how much he believes in him.
This has been a constant theme from him ever since he got here.
He mentioned him in his introductory Zoom call back in March. He called out Jalen Hyatt, and he's continued to praise Jalen Hyatt every single chance he gets. And it's nice to see them, again, the two of them also starting to develop a little bit of chemistry. I think those were the big plays on offense. Amir Smith-Marset had a nice catch from Jackson Dart early in practice on 7-on-7s.
And
then again
Pascal on the same 7-on-7 caught one in traffic over the middle too.
Yes, where he had a nice extended grab.
And that was Dart also.
Yes, and then Dart and Smith-Marset also connected towards the end of practice in 11-on-11s. It was pretty big play, first down. Thomas Fidone had a nice extended grab towards the end of practice. And
I had one other one I want to give you, Winston to Felton.
Oh, yes, another one-handed catch. Yes.
In 11-on-11s.
Yes, that is true. And then, while it's not going to count for anything, and not that plays right now count for anything anyway, but Tommy DeVito did have one really nice throw, deep pass down the field towards the end zone. I want to say it was about 35 to 40 yards. That, I mean, there was the offense, the receiver and the defender were going back at it, and the defender did end up breaking the pass up. It was a very nice play, but it was just a beautiful throw by Tommy. And I know we haven't talked about him much because of all the other quarterbacks that are currently here, and he's not getting quite as many reps, as maybe some of the other guys, but I just wanted to give him props because that was a beautiful throw. This was during 7-on-7s.
The left sideline one?
Yeah, towards the beginning of practice, 7-on-7s. Didn't count for anything. The defender made an amazing play, but it was a really beautiful
I'm
throw.
trying to think who it was. Do you have the pass?
It was 39. I believe that's
Fortune.
Odinell Fortune.
Yeah, Fortune.
Yes. Yeah.
Fortune. Because I remember the play, and I did not write down the number, which was my bad, but I do remember the play. All right, so that's it for the practice recap. Was there anything in particular outside of what Burns said about the spirited end of practice that you wanted to bring to the forefront before we start going to some phone calls?
Yeah, I mean, we don't get to hear from Brandon Brown too often. It's like
No, we don't.
once, maybe twice a year. And so we got to hear from him today. It was nice to hear from him. He's very insightful and thoughtful with his responses. Not that we'd expect anything less from him.
He's a Fordham guy. Come on.
He's a very smart guy. The number one thing that intrigued me about what he said was, obviously, throughout the pre-draft process, the Giants love Jackson Dart. We've heard it from everyone that's spoken about the process. Not breaking any news saying that, but he did share a tidbit that we had not heard previously, and that was when the Giants were down in Mobile for the Senior Bowl. They're interviewing all the different prospects from all these different schools from all across the country, and a common question they asked, I think he said they asked every single prospect was, who is one player from any team, any school that you would bring with you to the NFL? And he said that multiple guys from various different schools, none of which were Ole Miss, a lot of those guys said Jackson Dart, that they would want to bring Jackson Dart to be their quarterback in the NFL. I thought that was just a fun, cool little tidbit that we had not previously heard.
Well, I think the Giants have made it clear now they saw about 2 years of Dart in terms of the scouting process. And, when they got to see him at the Senior Bowl, they also had some staff members there too. Yep. Which gave them even more of an inside look as to the interior of what's going on inside his chest. And I think Brandon also said that every step along the way when you're scouting a player, there are these benchmarks that you're looking for. And you got to keep checking all those boxes as you go through those benchmarks. So from the time they saw him on tape to the time they researched him at Ole Miss, and they said his Ole Miss teammates were always overly supportive of him too.
Oh, yeah.
So they're checking all these boxes, and then they get to the Senior Bowl, and they get those other boxes checked. Then they get to the Combine, and he checks boxes at the Combine when they do the interview. Then he comes in for the visit, and every benchmark, he's checking all the boxes.
Yeah, Brandon even mentioned when he had his workout at Ole Miss, he's like, those aren't mandatory for the other guys on the team to show up. But Jackson Dart had every single one of his guys there catching passes, running routes from him because they wanted to support their quarterback.
Right.
And vice versa, when Walter Nolan, the defensive tackle, had his workout, Jackson Dart was the first person there cheering him on from the sideline, stayed the entire time. That just shows the camaraderie and the mutual respect Jackson had with all of his teammates at Ole Miss. And clearly he has respect from guys from schools all across the country as well, because multiple guys that have never played a single snap with him are saying, that's the quarterback, that's the guy I want to bring to the NFL with me. Clearly he's gained the respect of his peers already.
It's, look, I don't want to overplay this, but, Charlie Weiss, whose son was the offensive coordinator down there at Ole Miss, and we know Joe Judge is down there, Lane Kiffin is down there, and Charlie Weiss himself told us when we did the interview with him on Big Blue Kickoff Live, he got to sit in on a bunch of those meetings because Lane Kiffin allowed him to. We're talking about a bunch of folks who have some significant football background and obviously at a high level, who all helped train this guy every single step of the way. It shouldn't really surprise us that he's got so much going for him.
No, it sort of just confirmed a lot of what we already believed.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Again, obviously, this is all well and great. At the end of the day, it's going to be about him producing on whenever he actually gets into game action. We know that. But it is June 5th, and they're not playing games for a couple more months. So this is what we have to go on for right now.
Maybe the other item for Brandon Brown is that he said in terms of Evan Neal moving to guard, he can create movement at the line and handle the interior pass rush and absorb the power and the contact. So he has the physical tools to become a guard. He just needs to be more consistent. And the coaches have to make sure that they coach the proper technique with him and get him to smooth it out.
Yeah, and he also just about Evan mentioned that Evan came into the this offseason workout program with the best mindset you could possibly have given the circumstances. Like, he's ready to contribute any single way he can. Brandon mentioned he was more than happy doing this move to guard because it's the best thing for the team. And at the end of the day, that's all Evan wants to do. He just wants to help this team in any way he can, help them succeed, help this offensive line improve. And, if that's at guard, which that's clearly where he's been taking his reps this offseason, then that's great. He's willing to do whatever it takes.
Smart man. He's trying to resuscitate his NFL career.
Yeah, and look, we've seen, it seems like every year we see a guy that didn't quite make it at tackle move inside and put together a successful career on the inside. It's been happening, go back however many years. It happens quite often. Now, we don't know for sure if Evan will succeed, but going into this offseason, and again, I'm sure going into training camp next month, he has the mindset you want him to have given the circumstances.
Hey, look,
that's all you can ask for right now.
I've told people before, the best example I can give you was William Roberts. When he was drafted by the Giants as a tackle, it did not work out very well. He bounced around to a couple of positions for a few years, finally landed at guard, and wound up going to the Pro Bowl and helping the Giants win Super Bowls.
I mean, we just saw it with Mekhi Becton last year.
It happened with Mekhi Becton at the Eagles.
He got to go to Philadelphia.
It can happen.
It can happen. A good offensive line already, but that's just the latest example. It happens all the time. So.
All right. 201-939-4513. That's our wrap on what went on today with the media availabilities and out at practice. We invite your phone calls if you'd like to ask us a question or comment on something that we said, or maybe there's something else you'd like to talk about. 201-939-4513. We go to our first call. It's Cliff in New York, and you're the first one on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Hello.
Hello, guys. Good to be talking to you. I was listening yesterday, Paul. I don't know if you knew about, they did a rundown, Matt and John, about the position groups in the division versus ours. And
I'm aware. I'll be doing that with Lance tomorrow on the second half of that subject matter.
Okay. So I'm assuming that all that talk, Matt, was based on what the best knowledge that we have before we see how the competition shakes out in the rest of the preseason and into training camp in each group, right?
You mean our conversation yesterday?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So there's a chance that even by going into the first game, we might feel a little bit different about what we've seen just going through the preseason and training camp in terms of how we stack up against the other position groups in the division.
Yeah, of course. I mean, when I don't want to speak for John, but for me personally, when I was talking about the offensive line rankings yesterday in the division, I did have the Giants in fourth. But if Evan Neal comes out this summer and looks great at guard throughout training camp and then gets into preseason action and he's just a brick wall out there at guard, then that even before the actual game start, I will already be feeling at least a little bit better about the offensive line than I would have been last week, let's say. So I don't think it's going to change drastically until the regular season games actually begin, but there are certainly things that can happen once training camp starts that will have all of us feeling at least a little bit better about the offensive line.
Cliff, I would also add the preseason, you'll have two of the NFC East teams on national television. The Giants and the Patriots game on August 21st is going to be on Amazon Prime Video, and the Washington Commanders on August 18th will be taking on the Cincinnati Bengals on ESPN. So the only way for us, because we have no idea what's going on at Washington, Dallas, or Philadelphia camp unless we read it. I mean, come on, who's kidding who? We're not seeing what they're doing. We're watching what the Giants are doing every day. But our chance to even look at these teams will be either that Washington game, which is on ESPN, or NFL Network likes to replay over the course of the month as many of the preseason telecasts that have been shown around the league in the different markets. So eventually, at some point, we'll probably get a chance to click on a Dallas preseason game or a Philly preseason game, and who knows what we're going to see. But I think it's important to understand that. I mean, when they started this yesterday, and we'll go back to it tomorrow, I mean, what are we going off of? There's not a whole lot to chew on right now, so it's kind of a gut feel.
I mean, the information we're going off of the most is basically, what we saw last year. And for veteran guys, the last couple of seasons.
And draft projection.
Yeah. But again, projection is the key word. We all think Abdul Carter is going to be great, but he's got to go out there and actually do it.
Yep.
Same with guys from the other teams. John and I spoke yesterday about Josh Connerly, the offensive tackle for the Commanders. Well, he was a great prospect. A lot of people were high on him going into the draft, but that doesn't mean diddly squat until he actually goes out into a game and shows that he belongs, playing tackle in the NFL. So, yeah, again, it's June, so the information that we have to go on when we're doing these rankings is obviously limited. If we, were to go back after the season in 6-7 months, obviously we'd have a lot more to go off of then.
That's when John allows us all to look in the mirror and laugh at ourselves.
Well, listen, I'm happy to be the show us team. That's fine with me. I still think, based on the depth that's been introduced and the new talent that's been introduced, and in the draft and free agency, that we do have a chance to jump some people early on, and especially the first two games. I'm a little. I want to catch up a little bit with Evan Neal and Jackson Dart also, if you have a minute.
Yeah, go ahead.
When Joe Shane announced that, the first thing he said about Evan Neal maybe a month ago, he's okay with cross training at guard. It sounded like he was still very much in the mix at tackle. I mean, now it sounds like no, he's a guard. Do you think that's what happened?
Well, they signed Hudson. They signed Forsyth.
Yep. Drafted Marcus Bowe.
Bowe is a tackle guard. He can be either one, but
Joe did say that they were going to at least start him.
They're going to
at tackle.
They're going to start him. So I think at the moment there's a little bit of a glut there.
Yeah.
So I think that's why they really want to kind of push Neal into the guard part of the pool and see how he reacts.
Yeah, and look, during team drills, during these spring practices, at least where I'm standing, I'm like towards the end zone. So I try to get a full view of the field. It is a little tough to see the line of scrimmage because I'm typically, 30, 40 yards away from there. But it seems like most of his reps, if not all, have been on the inside during these team drills.
I don't think I've seen him on the edge.
I haven't noticed him at tackle, at least. He could have been out there again, and there's no, replay to go back and look at every single play for us. But it seems like most of his snaps, if not all, have been on the inside, and he's been mixed in, some work with the ones, some work with the twos. They're getting him out there. They're, trying to give him exposure to this, I don't want to say new position because he did used to play it in the past, but it seems like he's more focused on guard right now.
Part of that may simply be also they want to see what they really have in Hudson and Forsyth and Bowe.
And what they have in him at guard.
Yeah.
They've seen what he has done the last couple of years at tackle. It's obviously not what anyone would have hoped for, including Evan himself. But they clearly have some, at least some level of confidence that he could at least potentially succeed on the inside. And you can't find that out until you actually put him there and let him get some reps.
Remember, Cliff, Andrew Thomas is still coming back from the foot injury, and so they're holding him out right now. So he's not out there even doing these drills, okay? So they're trying to see as much as they possibly can, and he's right. They want to see about Neal at guard, but they also, I think, want to find out about these guys they've brought in. They know very little about them, comparatively speaking.
Yeah.
Well, I thought guard was looking kind of deep with Kubas, and there was somebody else that.
They have Azudu. They have Azudu, right? He's been out there.
Oh, yeah.
Stinny's been out there.
Yeah, I've been holding the torch for him for 3 years. I mean,
Stinny was brought back. Van Roden was brought back.
Right.
Runyon, who hasn't been out here, but Runyon is obviously on the team and will be part of the starting offensive line.
Well, we think.
I mean, assuming he's healthy, I'd be pretty surprised if he wasn't.
I agree with you, but that doesn't mean that somebody can't steal a job. Remember,
that is true.
Nowadays, injuries are no excuse. If somebody can beat you out, they beat you out.
No, that is true. And, there have been multiple veteran players that have said, like, we're all competing right now. Mm-hmm. Nothing is being handed to. It was Greg Van Roden last week said, nothing is being handed to anyone, especially when it comes to the competition at offensive line. I'm pretty confident in saying the two starting tackles, assuming they're healthy, will be Andrew Thomas and Jermaine Illuminor.
100%.
outside of that, I mean, there are guys that I think and I'm pretty confident will be the starters, but you got to go through training camp. All those guys have to earn their spots. Nothing's being handed to anyone this summer. That has become abundantly clear.
Cliff, this line and this team, but specifically this offensive line, is not good enough to just hand out positions and not have competition.
Yep.
No. Well, look, it all sounds pretty arrow pointing up to me with that situation. Before we get to Jackson, I just wanted to mention that I'm a little. I didn't look up Shane Bowen's record before he excelled with the Titans.
Okay.
But I just remember when he came in, his MO as the DC was like rush 4.
Yes.
In the front, and stop the run on the way to the quarterback and play with a certain attitude. And now it sounds like, well, he's going to be very creative with putting together some guys that might appear to be a little undersized but have exceptional gifts in other ways. I just hope he's got that kind of a. It's beginning to sound more like competing with Vic Fangio and who's the other DC?
Cliff, before you go there, I think you also have to understand he came in last year as in his first year as this defensive coordinator, and he had a unit that, to be frank with you, was somewhat limited. They have more talent on this defense than they did last year, and we have heard this word versatility a billion times during the offseason. They added guys on the defensive line, which I believe are going to give them multiple looks in the front seven that they could not even dream about using last year because they didn't have the personnel. Then they also add Carter, which now gives them 3 bona fide pass rushers, either at the edge spot or the second level, depending upon where they play. So the toolbox is now a heck of a lot more full, don't you think?
100%. And I mean, you didn't even mention all the guys in the secondary.
Didn't even talk about the secondary.
Adebo and Holland were brought in, but let's not forget Tyler Nubin and Drew Phillips, as good as they were last year, and I think both of them played very well as rookies. They were rookies. They are now going into year 2 where they have a full year of experience under their belt and now have sort of, quote unquote, veteran partners in the secondary with them between Adebo, Holland, Deonte Banks going into year 3 and year 2 with Shane Bowen. Like, there are just so many pieces at every level. And Brian Burns spoke about this, saying Burns and Russell Wilson, they both mentioned there's just talent at all 3 levels of the defense. The pieces are there. And as Coach Dable has said, it's now up to Shane Bowen to, put it all together and make it work.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Cliff. Appreciate it. 201-939-4513 is our phone number. I might add, Shane Bowen particularly was asked about Tay Banks, who, as we know, had a subpar second season. He was up and down and struggled some. In talking about Banks, and again, I paraphrase these things, he said he was locked in. His approach is that he seems to want to know more, and you can tell because he's asking a lot more questions. And Bowen said there's growth every year in a player like that. He's entering year number 3. And he said now the good news is, from his perspective, that's Bowen's, there are relationships that have been formed. And now you can focus on other stuff because you're not getting to know each other anymore. So I'm sensing, we'll have to see how it turns out in training camp and the season, but I'm sensing the fact that Bowen feels a lot better about what he can do with Tay Banks this year as opposed to last year. I'm sensing that, and it seems, now I haven't talked to Banks myself, so I don't know if it's being reciprocated, but we've talked all off season that Banks and Bowen need to both kind of meet somewhere more in the middle so that they can find a way to maximize his production.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think it's important to also remember that the 2 seasons that Deonte Banks has played for the Giants in the NFL, almost every week he's just been matched up with the opposing team's number 1 wide receiver. And, you go through the schedule last year, there were some extremely talented wide receivers that Deonte Banks was going up against each and every week. Paulson Adebo was brought in. He is a veteran corner who's had a a good amount of success under his belt already, is known for being a ball hawk. I don't think Deonte Banks is just going to automatically get thrown onto the number one receiver each and every week and left on an island to, fend for himself against the opposing wideout now. It's just going to be a little bit less pressure on Deonte when you have not only a Debo, but the safeties that he has around him now. Drew Phillips going into year 2. The whole starting secondary should be a lot better than it was last year, and that will obviously, and the whole defense, so to speak,
with an increased pass rush,
with the increased pass rush, exactly, and that will help Deonte Banks for sure.
Yeah, and I'll say this too, depending upon how Banks does during camp, the preseason, and even early in the regular season, I wouldn't be surprised. Again, he's got to prove it. If at some point they don't even travel a Debo with the number one and they just play left and right and they say, let's play straight up.
Yeah,
Banks has the tools to do it. He
sure.
just hasn't shown the consistency at that level yet.
Yeah, he's done it at times over his first 2 seasons. There were some games where, we saw him match up against a top receiver and hold his own and do, I'm not going to say shut the guy down, but play pretty well. As much as you could ask for going up against some of the top receivers in the league. He just didn't do it on a consistent week in and week out basis, which is what honestly the defense needs. The defense needs everyone to play consistently, and that's been, one of the things, probably the biggest thing holding Deonte Banks back these first 2 seasons.
You know what? Before we get to another call at 201-939-4513, we remind you that the Giants Huddle, John does a ton of interviews with not only Giants, but NFL personnel, media personnel. As always, it's there on your favorite podcast platforms, the Giants mobile app. And we invite you to check those out. Did you put anything up in the last 24 hours?
I don't believe any huddles, but we did have a new Her Playbook podcast.
Okay.
Which is Madeline Burke sitting down with Carly, I want to pronounce this right, Carly Gruenberg, who's the chief of staff for FIFA World Cup 2026 that will be taking place, at least partially, in the stadium right here. Madeline had a nice, interesting conversation with her here in studio, about half an hour long.
Okay.
Again, it's not a huddle about necessarily the Giants, but it is a good
podcast platform.
It's part of the podcast platform, and it's a good listen. I don't know how many of you are soccer fans out there, but obviously FIFA World Cup coming here is a pretty big deal next summer.
Well, they have the Club World Cup actually coming here in another week.
Yes.
And you should see the village they've built in the parking lot outside the stadium. It is quite a production. Also, we'd like to remind you, the Giants TV app is available. It's free. You can get all the videos and comments and fun things. It's all free there on Giants TV. Check that out when you get a chance. Also, season tickets for the 2025 season means you can take your fandom to the next level, catch all the action at MetLife Stadium, and of course you can stay connected to the team all year round, not just on game day, with exclusive member access and benefits. To learn more about a New York Giants season ticket membership, visit giants.com/tickets. Before we get to another call, all 3 of the coordinators talked this morning.
Yes.
So Michael Gabriel, the special teams coordinator, and you folks know I've been touting the special teams makeover now for quite a while. I think this is one of the X factors on this team that's going to get this team, moving in the right direction. And if you listen to him today, the way he talked about, for example, Board, the guy who was signed from the Baltimore Ravens, something I've mentioned on this program several times. That's why I was not surprised. You get the impression that Gabriel feels much, much better about his special teams unit this year than he did going into last season.
Yeah, I mean, also, Amir Smith-Marset, I think we spoke about this the other day. He's spending the whole offseason with the team, as opposed to last year when he got here after the season already started. Obviously, having the benefit of going through an entire offseason with the team helps prepare you for the entire season. And he was, even with that, limited preparation last year, Amir Smith-Marset was a very good returner. He was very good. Coach Gabriel spoke about what Amir brought to the return game and how he was, I don't want to say a pleasant surprise, because they clearly expected him to contribute when they brought him in.
Well,
but I think he even probably contributed more than maybe Gabriel was necessarily expecting, because he mentioned he had 2 kick return touchdowns last year. One did get called back because of a penalty, but 2 separate times he got into the end zone, and Gabriel said, not many guys did that last year. Not many guys do that any year on a kick return, and Amir did it twice. So yeah, I'm with you. I think, the special teams unit in general seems to always just be like the forgotten unit, but it is extremely important. It helps both sides of the ball when you can win, the field possession battle. And obviously your special teams unit plays a vital role in that.
I think he has found something at Smith-Marset. Looking at his history, this is the 5th organization he's been with since coming in with the Vikings in 2021. Now, he's a local guy out of New Jersey.
From Newark.
And you know what? Ever since he's gotten here, he has just been, what a great attitude. I mean, he is always very energized. He, as Gabriel said, he's kind of like a leader on specials. People look up to him. They respect him an awful lot. And, I don't know what it took to unlock his potential, but we saw some really good flashes out of him last year. I'm excited about him in the return game. I really am. I think he could be special. So, hey, good for him. Now, the other item that he was asked about was also Jamie Gillen, who he really heaped some praise on last year for his ability to find the ball inside the 10, or drop the ball inside the 10, I should say, and also his ability to fight the nasty conditions in MetLife Stadium. And when you talk about the field position battle, Matt, if your punter doesn't know what he's doing, it's a big, big problem, because that is as much a part of tilting the field as anything else. Yes, your coverage units have to be good. Your return guys have to be able to bring the ball out some. But Jamie Gillen, I thought, had the best year of his career last year. I thought.
I agree with you. I spoke about this on the show during the season, after the season. I saw him from some people on Twitter criticizing him. And I'm like,
people wanted to get rid of him on
and
Twitter.
I was saying, like, if you said that maybe after the year before, I would at least somewhat be able to understand your reasoning.
It was inconsistent the year before.
But he's coming off what was just a very solid season. I mean, it might, I feel like sometimes we just sort of take the punting unit for granted. But if you have someone back there that you just don't need to worry about, that is a huge, huge plus.
Yeah.
Again, I just spoke before about the field possession battle. That is a huge part, especially when, we obviously all expect the Giants offense to be improved this year. I don't know if anyone's expecting the Giants offense to be, a top 5 scoring unit.
40 points a game?
Yeah, I don't know if anyone is expecting that. But guess what? Setting your offense up with great field position, or setting your defense up with great field position, which in turn, after a stop, will help your offense get good field position as well. That's going to help your offense score more points. And Jamie Gillen plays a big role in that. If he has another season like he did last year, I think it's going to be extremely good things for the Giants special teams unit, at least the punting side.
I finally want to mention, before we go back to the phones, he was asked about Graham Gano. Now, Gano has been banged up and hurt in each of the last 2 seasons. When he is kicked, he has been one of the best in the league. He's also one of your higher paid kickers in the league, deservedly so. So Gabriel was asked about him and said he looked like himself in the final 3 games of last year, and he's looked very good so far this spring in year 17. He said he approaches the game the right way, takes care of his body, and is very much looking forward to having him here. Now, at the same time, he was asked about McInerney, the kicker who was on the international program last year, then made it to the practice squad, then actually had a kick in a game. And we all know he's got a cannon of a leg, and the only thing that Gabriel would say is that, hey, there's competition for everybody. He would not rule anything out. There's competition for everybody. They know what kind of leg the kid has. But, I thought the positive remarks about Gano were certainly something that sounded reassuring to me, as if, they're thinking, unless something goes wrong with him during training camp or the preseason, I suspect he's going to be the guy.
Yeah, me too. I mean, did you see what Graham was doing, like in between plays during team drills today? So this was towards the end zone that Dan Salomon and I were standing off to the side of, but like in between plays during 11-on-11s, while, both offense and defense were regrouping, figuring out the play they were running, Graham, who was standing off to the side, wasn't even on the field, was standing behind everyone, on the sideline, like, I want to say maybe 15, 20 yards-ish
probably 20.
to the side, kicking field goals from like a 45-degree angle. And he was making almost every single one. Dan and Salomon and I were standing there like, how the heck is he doing this? And then we remember, oh yeah, this guy has been a very successful kicker in this league for a very long time. We might think, kicking from that angle is impossible, but for him, it was literally nothing. One of the ball boys was standing on the other side of the goalpost. He literally did not have to move. He was standing there in one place, feet firm, and Graham just kept on hitting him ball after ball. It was incredible to see.
I was watching it more from afar, and I could have sworn it was like a David Blaine magic act.
Yeah.
The way he was putting that ball in.
Yeah.
And it was ridiculous.
Harrison was standing behind the goalpost.
I know.
And he literally did not have to move. He would just stand there and catch each one without moving his feet at all. I don't know how he did
it. This guy's something else. So let's hope for his sake that he is healthy.
Yes.
Goes through camp fine, and that they can count on him.
Yes, that is the most important thing. Obviously, health has really been the biggest hindrance to Graham Gano having too much success the last 2 years. But keep in mind, the year before that, in his prior seasons with the Giants, when he was healthy, he was good. It was never a question of, what do we have back there? Is there a competition? Like, that was never a question.
He's a Pro Bowl level kicker.
Exactly. So let's just hope that, he is healthy, stays healthy all season, and then we'll just go back to not having to worry at all about the field goal kicker.
Again, this team's trying to improve. They can't afford to squander opportunities at points.
Yeah.
Marquise in California, you're next on the program. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
I just have two things I want to say. First, Shane, he's been real patient this whole time, and he's been waiting for this moment. Like he knocked it out of the park. He's been patient. He's been waiting for this moment, and he capitalized this year.
Okay.
And that leads into my next point. I'm tired of hearing about the schedule. We play hard people. Guess what? They have to play us. And I think we have the defense to punch some people in the mouth every single week in and week out. Like they need to be scared of us because we have a team that can compete week in and week out. And I don't think we need to be scared of all these teams that we face on our schedule because we're a good team. We underperformed last year. I think we were a better team than our record showed. Mm-hmm. And I think this year, barring injury, of course, that goes around for the whole league, but barring injury, we have the capacity to play with anybody, maybe not the top 3 or top 5 in the league, but anybody in this league. And I don't think we should be scared of anybody in this league. I don't think we should be scared of anybody in our schedule. I think we can just surprise people.
All right, Marquise, I'll say this. Russell Wilson was asked specifically about when he was with Pittsburgh last year, and they played the Giants, and they beat them in overtime in Pittsburgh. You'll remember the primetime game. He was asked about this defense. What did you think about this defense when you played them last year? And now you see the improvements, the guys who were brought in. We've talked about them now all show. And he said flat out, as the quarterback, you're concerned about Dexter Lawrence. You're concerned about Brian Burns, who's one of the premier edge rushers in the game, and Kayvon Thibodeau can play too. Now, of course, Kayvon had a bit of a down year last year, missed a month with the fractured wrist and the surgery and everything, but we know from his double-digit sack season the year before that he can be a force, and he certainly was good against the run last year. Let's not make any mistake about that. He didn't get the sacks, but he played the run very well on the edge. Now you add Abdul Carter to that mix. I mean, Russell Wilson was heaping praise on that defense and then mentioned Okereke and mentioned the secondary. And, you even said before, Holland and Adebo coming in here, this defense could be really good.
Yeah, and look, we've all heard so much about the schedule now, which I don't fully understand because we've known since the end of the season exactly who we were playing, and we knew we had the hardest strength of schedule.
Mm-hmm.
When you have the hardest strength of schedule, I don't really care what order you put them in. It's not going to be easy. So I
That's
agree
true.
that it's been a lot about how tough the schedule is when that's nothing that is not a surprise.
Nope.
And not only that, but I can tell you, being afraid of the schedule, that is something that I've kind of just seen like on Twitter. And from and from fans calling into the show, fans on Twitter saying this, the guys on this team, they are not afraid of the schedule. That's just not how they are built.
No.
They are welcoming, the challenge. And Brian Burns brought this up when, mentioning the spirited end of practice, is that there are just a bunch of guys with dog mentalities and dog mindsets on this team now. And we've spoken about this. You look at the draft class. Just about every single one of those guys have a little bit of, whether you want to call it edge, a little bit of, I like to refer to it just like a little bit of psycho, like a good psycho. A good psycho that you want guys to have. Like, this is a roster now.
I call it oregano. Okay?
This is a roster now that is not just going to, stand there and let other teams punch them in the mouth. They are the team that's going to go out there and try to punch the other team in the mouth. Now, that's all well and great. It doesn't matter unless you obviously start winning games.
You got to back it up.
Of course. But, the mentality and the mindset of the roster now, to me as an observer, it just feels different. With all the different guys between the veterans and the rookies that have been brought in, it just feels like a different sort of, mentality. Like, you can feel that there are just more quote unquote dogs out there now.
If I can, just a second, Marquise, and maybe you'll understand this. I think you will because you've been here, Matt. I think these players, they know that they can be competitive. I don't think they hope to be competitive. I think they know it.
They expect it.
Yeah, I really do.
They're ready.
And I think
They're
there's a
ready.
difference in that.
Yeah.
They're ready.
Yep. But it's only June.
I mean, I think if it were up to them, it feels like they'd be ready to put on pads and go at it against other teams right now.
Yeah, I think
Unfortunately,
they
we still got to.
would.
Fortunately, we got to wait a few more months.
I think they would like to play right now. Anything else before we let you go?
Other than that, I just want to say our offense is going to feed off that defense, and our running game is going to be like a step better, I think, and our passing game is going to be a lot better. Our number 2, number 3, number 4 are going to feed a lot better than they did last year, and not to mention neighbors. So I think overall, we're going to feed off that defense, and our offense is going to come to play. And they're not going to be top 10, but we don't need them to be top 10. We just need them to come and play, and they're gonna feed off of that defense, and I'll take the rest offline.
All right. Thanks very much for the call.
Thank you, Marquise.
One of the things that we've always talked about here, and Brian Daboll loves to use the term complementary football, even more so than some of the other coaches who have been around in the last decade. He loves the term. Well, it's a lot easier to play complementary football when all 3 of your units have something going for them. And, that hasn't been the case around here for a while. I mean, it was in 2022. That was the outlier, right? But since 2016, the Giants have not had the ability to play really solid, cohesive, complementary football except for 2022. In all of these other years, at least one of the 3 units was scuffling and struggling along. And so it makes it really, really hard to start playing a strategic game, because if you have at least one unit struggling, you can't count on anything. And that's a problem when you're a coach.
Yeah, I mean, when you have one unit, whether it be the offense or the defense, that, if it's the offense that can't stay on the field or the defense that can't get off the field, it obviously is a huge negative impact to the other side of the ball on your own team. I mean, if your offense is going 3 and out every single drive, your defense is not getting any sort of opportunity to catch their breath. And they're going to be out there every, 6 minutes of real time, and they're just going to be completely gassed. You can't expect a unit. You could have the best defense in the NFL, and we've seen this. What was it 2 years ago? The Cleveland Browns defense was tremendous. Their offense could not do anything, could not put drives together. And after, I want to say maybe 6 to 8 weeks, you started to see the defense crack because they just could not continue to play majority of the game every single game. It's not feasible to have a unit as talented as it might be to have to play that much, that often every single week and expect them to still be able to compete at an extremely high level.
Well, besides that, you had a running game that was sporadic. You had a passing game that was sporadic. You had special teams. You didn't get much out of your return game the last several years until Smith-Marset started doing something last year. Your field goal kicking, last 2 years, Gano's been hurt.
Yeah.
That's been all messed up. Folks, is it any wonder why, the team has suffered some bad records because of the way that the thing has come to pass? Jay in Phoenix, you're going to be last on our program today. Hello.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Thanks for calling.
Good. How are you, Jay?
Doing great. Hey, one thing I just wanted to call on was, and I've been thinking about this a lot as I've been looking at the roster. Do you guys have any thoughts about possibly a giant need for adding some veteran depth at safety? When I've looked at the teams that have won Super Bowls or have done really well in the past, whether it's adding Dave Duerson or
R.J. McQuarters or Deion Grant.
Exactly.
I know where you're going.
All those guys. I'm just looking at the three that we have. We always mention the three, but it'd be nice to have a fourth guy. And there's a couple of them out there that I think might be a good fit. You got Jordan Poyer, who played for the Bills for a number of years. He's a little long in the tooth. Not sure he wants to keep playing. Von Bell and then Justin Simmons, who might be a little too expensive, but both, those just add in a depth piece there, I think would be nice. Get a little more veteran leadership in that secondary.
Well, let me say this. I've advocated for a couple of months now that if the Giants were going to add somebody else late over the summer, I kind of would like them to grab a veteran corner. One of those Sensabaugh, Leon Hall, one of those kinds of guys. To kind of just solidify the back of the depth chart because of Flott's lack of durability. I like Cordell Flott. You guys know this. I've been all over him since he came into the league. But he's had trouble staying on the field. Did better last year, but his durability has come into question. And Hawkins has yet to raise his game to the level where you can count on him. So I wouldn't mind adding a veteran corner, especially since your guy Belton is having a really nice spring.
Yeah, he's looking great. And, they might not be the big, flashy, sexy names, but Raheem Lane and Anthony Johnson are both veteran safeties that have been in the league for a few years now that haven't, had a ton of playing time, but do have some experience under their belt. So it's, it's not like there's the top three guys and then a bunch of rookies and undrafted free agents. But at the same time, the Giants did add a couple of undrafted free agents at that position that clearly they want to at least see if they've got anything there. I mean, every year you see, one or two undrafted free agents typically make the team, or at least given it like a serious consideration. And, that I'm not going to say that is definitely the case here, but that could fully be the case. I mean, one of the guys that had interception today, Makari Page, is a safety. Obviously, it's OTAs in only spring, but they clearly just want to see what they have with all of these UDFAs. That's the whole point of bringing these guys in. Now, come training camp, if it seems like, the depth at safety is an issue, if, let's say, God forbid, one of the top three gets hurt, or even just a little banged up, and then all of a sudden, those other guys they just talked about see more playing time and really don't, live up to whatever the coaching staff is expecting from them, there's always time to add veterans later in the summer. And I feel like, especially when it comes to the defensive backfield, corners, safeties, I feel like those guys, a lot of them typically sign, right before the start of training camp, throughout training camp. Like, there will be opportunities if the Giants coaching staff and front office feels like there's no depth at safety. There will be plenty of opportunity to still add an older veteran to that group if need be.
You always have these older veterans who don't want to go through the rigors of camp anyway. and they will sign as late as they can, sometimes even after week 1 when the contracts are not guaranteed. So would I be shocked to see a veteran safety or a veteran corner here at some point? No, not at all.
No.
But right now, I don't see that happening. Not today.
Right now, I don't think it's gonna. I don't think any roster moves, big roster moves like that, will happen at least until right before training.
And I think every team probably feels that way right now too, as do those veterans who are on the street.
Yeah,
they're not anxious to come in and dance either.
I mean, there was a report yesterday that a certain veteran free agent quarterback is waiting until right before the start of training camp to sign with Pittsburgh, and that's the most important position. And and this person supposedly doesn't want to get out there until literally the start of training camp.
You mean he's still floating around out there?
Doing whatever he does.
I thought he was captured by UFOs and aliens and brought to another planet somewhere.
So yeah,
Thank you, Jay.
There's still time, Jay, to answer your question. There's still time to add.
Oh, I was just going to say, so appreciate the thoughts on that, guys, and it makes sense about adding vets a little bit later, and so glad that the quarterback who we shall not name is not our problem. My goodness, I was holding my breath.
Couldn't agree with you more. Could you imagine having to go through that soap opera right now? Forget about it. Let the folks in Pittsburgh deal with that.
I'm a lot happier.
Thank you, Jay.
Thanks, Jay.
Appreciate it. All right, folks, we'll be back on Big Blue Kickoff Live tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time with another live 1-hour show. But that will wrap things up for today. Anything else?
No, I'm very interested to hear where you and Lance land on these position rankings.
That's tomorrow. The second half of our position rankings in the NFC East. We'll rank them 1 to 4 in each of the categories. And we'll see how it all turns out. And, of course, you can all laugh at us at the end of the season again, like you always do, because, after all, we have no idea what these other teams in the division really are going to bring to the table, at least not in early June. That'll do it for this edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. So glad you could be with us, again, coming from the Giants Podcast Studio, presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. For Matt Citak, I'm Paul Dottino. We'll see you next time.